Start getting to the bottom of this real Russian collusion. The American people have a right to know. Tonight, we're finally making progress. Here with reaction, the attorney that is representing the FBI informant, Victoria Tunsing, as well as the Hill's John Solomon, Circuit News' Sarah Carter. I'm beginning to think you guys are the Woodward and Bernstein of our time. Thank you both for being here. I know it's taken a lot of courage on your part, and you've taken a lot of personal hits, but now the evidence is overwhelming. Victoria, let's start with what we were asking for last night is now come out. That, in fact, the NDA, the non-disclosure...
Here it is. There's the
I love
letter.
when my guests come with props. That's great. Tell us what you got there.
Well, I have the letter that you read, the press release that you tracked. Actually, the wording is the same in my letter. It's just to me and telling me to get in contact with the FBI about the process.
Okay, so the process would be that the NDA will be lifted, and the informant, and we were told he knew in 2009 and 2010, before the Uranium One deal was done, that he had overwhelming evidence, that he had emails, that he had documents, that he has tapes that would show the bribery, the racketeering, the corruption, the money laundering and extortion. Is that what we expect to hear?
Yes, and he can put a lot of meat on those bones that Sarah and John have built for us. He can give context, and he can tell about conversations the Russians had about what they were doing with various piles of money and the uranium.
Where did the money come from, Victoria?
Russia. I'm not going to get into that yet. Let's wait till he tells us.
Sarah, let's go to you, and John, you guys have been amazing on this. I really give you guys a lot of credit. Okay. Let's go to 2009. What did the FBI know, and why would people like Robert Mueller, the director of the FBI at the time, or Rod Rosenstein, who was ahead in the investigation, why would they have ignored this? And then also, the Department of Justice, Eric Holder, had to know what the FBI had. Why would he ever sign off on giving Putin 20% of our uranium when the evidence shows he was trying to corner the market here?
Well, I certainly think, Sean, that what's going to happen here is that this investigation, like Victoria said, there's going to be a lot more meat on these bones. And what we knew from now, looking at the documents, back in 2009, they were well aware of money laundering, kickbacks connected to the Russian uranium industry and connected to firms here inside, inside the United States. So one of the things that they're going to be looking for is those connections, and where did that money go, and who they were bribing, and how real a national security threat was this? I mean, was this just kind of covered up? Because remember, nobody back then actually knew. There was an ongoing investigation, so it was really up to the FBI. And the informant, the confidential informant, spent 4 years undercover, and it was like 4 years before any charges were brought against these players. And remember, they were only brought against these players, very minor, charges, and the exposure to these companies was not made public. So I think right now, the House Intelligence Committee, the House Oversight Committee, the Senate Judiciary Committee, and hopefully a special counsel will look into this and connect all of those dots.
I want to just stay on this, and I promise we have plenty of time tonight because you guys are here for a while. So for 4 years, this FBI informant, Victoria's client, worked undercover, and he discovered a network, if you will, evidence that showed not only did they use money laundering, kickbacks, bribery, extortion, but that they also had the evidence that this was a network that was being built and designed by Moscow and Vladimir Putin to corner uranium market in this country. He knew that. He knew that at the time. Is that what you're saying?
And
That's exactly what I'm
influence,
saying.
and to peddle influence with the State Department and the Clintons.
All right, first we'll go to Sarah, then we'll go to John. Sarah?
Yes, I mean, one of the biggest issues was that Vladimir Putin wanted to penetrate the U.S. uranium market as well as our energy market. This was a huge deal for him. He wanted to move this through. It was a main point in all of the things that he did. And I think that the informant who was privy to these conversations, who had recordings, who had emails, is able to show that.
Does he still have
I'm
them?
going to leave that to Victoria to answer.
Victoria?
We'll let you know. We'll let you know what he has.
You know, you've been a friend for years. You're so tough. It drives me crazy, but I love you for it. And I'd hire you in 20 seconds because you're so good. All right, John Solomon, let's go to this issue. This is a huge... We have all... You go back, it's 2 years since we learned about Uranium One. Peter Schweitzer will join us later. You guys have been digging and investigating now for a long time. Bit by bit, you're putting this together. Is this a network? Was Vladimir Putin, through agents, trying to corner the market in uranium, and our FBI knew about it, and Eric Holder, the head of the Attorney General, the head of the Department of Justice, actually signed off on this?
Well, listen, one of the things, today I ordered up the transcript for the sentencing hearing, and there's an amazing gap from a few months before these guys pled out, where the government said, we think this leads all the way to Russia, that the benefactors are in Russia, and that the people who controlled the conspiracy were in Russia. And then when they got to the sentencing hearing, they kind of minimized it, saying, we really don't know where the money went. And the judge was kind of incredulous, saying, how could you not know where the money's going? But one of the more important things that they did say at the sentencing was, there's no doubt that this compromised America's nuclear security. There was no doubt that it was a corrupt scheme that could have put uranium in danger.
All right, so John, let me ask you.
Yeah.
So Bill Clinton gets twice his normal speaking fees in Moscow. At the time, he's asking his own wife's State Department to give permission for him to meet with nuclear operatives in Russia, people involved in this sort of thing. He then got to meet with Putin. He's being paid by a bank that has a financial interest in Uranium One. Meeting with Putin, wanting to talk to the nuclear officials in Russia, talks to Putin, the deal gets done, but our government knew about the bribery, money laundering, all this other corruption. They knew about it the whole time. How could you possibly sign that deal and give America's uranium away and sell our country's security out?
There's no doubt that the color of money that was raining down during this period was noticeably red. It was coming from Moscow. I've been working on a project just putting all the different monies that came in from Russia. It's over $40 million over a 2-3 year period going to people around the Clintons. That can't be an accident.
And
$40
Sean,
million
don't
before
forget,
they signed off on Uranium One.
I'm sorry, Sean?
$40 million before they signed off on Uranium One?
Well, during the time when Uranium One was being reviewed, after it was approved, and while these new nuclear commercial contracts that were coming in from the utilities were also getting a nod from the Obama administration. It's a 2-3 year window, but it's a lot of money. And tomorrow or the next couple of days, we'll be able to come on and lay out that money path for you.
Sean, don't forget that
go ahead,
my
Victoria.
client was being told by the FBI that President Obama was being briefed on this matter.
Wouldn't we know from his presidential daily briefing?
We would. Can we get those, John and Sarah?
Yeah, I think that
All
maybe
right, I'm way on time.
those.
You're all staying, so don't go anywhere. We're going to come back. So earlier tonight, big news. The Department of Justice announced that the FBI informant at the center of this Uranium One scandal will be permitted now to testify and speak out before Congress. That NDA is lifted. We continue with John Solomon from The Hill, Circa News' Sarah Carter, and the lawyer for this FBI informant, our friend Victoria Tunsing. Also joining us now, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, who has identified a lot of crimes here. I want to go back to where we were, though. Victoria, your client is saying, just so we're clear, that the president was made aware in 2009 of all of the bribery, all of the kickbacks, all of the extortion, all of the money laundering, and Vladimir Putin's intention to corner the American uranium market. Am I getting that right?
You are. Well, the FBI told him that that was true. Now, were they fibbing? I doubt it. If they were being very specific about, we're giving it to the president in his daily briefing, and that was prior to October 2010 when the CFIUS decision was made.
And Mueller and Rosenstein, they knew about it, but they're now investigating Trump-Russia collusion? Isn't there a little conflict there?
Yeah, it's really bizarre.
You can't even make, I couldn't write a novel this bizarre.
No, but we deal in appearances of conflict. So, that should be enough right there.
Right there, exactly. Just the appearance of impropriety. We have so much more. All right, you've identified, thank you for handing this to me. I love Greg, he does all the research. How many crimes?
13 potential crimes committed by Hillary Clinton. She could be charged for 6 anti-corruption statutes. They're all felonies. She could also be charged with racketeering for using her charity as a criminal enterprise. And then you've got all of the email crimes, 2 of them under the Espionage Act and 2 additional. And now this latest dossier information, you can't pay a foreign national relative to a political campaign. And it appears she also, and the DNC, hid it in their disclosure reports, which could also be criminally charged.
But let's go to this one issue here. But the fact that they knew that Russia was doing this, and they still signed off on it, and all the money ended back in the Clintons. I don't see, to me, who would ever, just on the face of it, give the hostile nation that the media has been telling us about for a year, and the hostile actor, Vladimir Putin, 20% of our uranium, knowing that his agents are in the United States doing all this.
And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission confirmed to the New York Times that huge quantities of yellowcake uranium, the composite dust material that's used for nuclear weapons, left the United States to Canada, where it was then shipped overseas. And so, you know, when I hear Democrats today say, oh, it never left the United States because that was part of the deal that it stay here.
Bull.
The Nuclear Regulatory Commission says didn't happen.
Wow. Let me go back to John Solomon. John, let's talk a little bit. Mueller was the FBI agent. Rosenstein was in charge of this investigation. How did they get, with that conflict, that they knew all this information, and Eric Holder was the head of the Justice Department at the time, and now, of course, we may have President Obama himself knowing all of this. How could anybody have allowed this all to happen and allow Moscow and Putin to be successful?
Well, that's a $64,000 question, right? We need to know who knew what and when, right? And why did they make decisions if they had the knowledge? And if they made decisions without the knowledge, how could it be that they didn't know these things going on in government? I think the committees are going to dig into this. I've talked to several of the lawmakers involved in this investigation, and they know exactly the questions they want to ask. They know the documents they want. And I think today's breakthrough moment, getting that informant, Victoria's client, to be able to testify is going to answer a lot of questions that we've been in the dark on for 8 years. You go back to 2009.
And I would add to this, Sarah, I'm not trying to get off track here. I want your thoughts on Rosenstein and Mueller, but then it does bring up the question why Mueller never went to Julian Assange, who is the one guy in the world that we know knows that, in fact, and he's saying that it wasn't Russia that gave the DNC emails, and Mueller never tried to talk to him. Not one time. Never.
I know. I find that stunning. I find that stunning because that was the person, Julian Assange was the person that received this information. So you would think either way he would want to know what Julian Assange has to say. And I want to get it back over to the other point on the CFIUS and what Greg Jarrett said. Yeah, this yellow cake, you know, was transported overseas, and there's a lot of concern. There's a lot of concern that they weren't able to track it to where it was supposed to go. So I think there's going to be an investigation, an extending investigation that's classified to find out what really happened to some of this uranium. We know that there was corruption. We know right now that there was money laundering, and we understand that inside Rosatom and all of these companies, there were these people connected to all of these crimes. So what happened if that was sold to an enemy state? What happened if some of that yellow cake disappeared?
Iran comes to mind.
Yes.
Victoria, can you tell us this? Did your client save all the evidence that he had acquired?
He has a lot of evidence. I haven't been able to get to see it all, but I will do so now.
Wow. Greg Jarrett, based on what we know, assuming everything that they have been reporting is true, that they have documents, emails, tapes, and that millions of dollars, and he knows, and he was there. He was 4 years inside this, and they knew in 2009. Are people going to jail this time? Is this it?
I would suspect so, and people...
And the kickbacks to the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation?
Somebody's got to go to jail over this, and not just the one who's been convicted and clammed up.
Who are the top people that are in jeopardy?
Well, I think Hillary Clinton, anybody at the DNC.
Eric Holder?
James Comey in particular, because, you know, he may have abused his office, and he could have done it for...
Mueller? Mueller knew.
No, covering it up to cry to Congress.
He should recuse himself. He should have recused
his duty. He should recuse himself.
Same with Rosenstein.
Absolutely. And Jeff Sessions needs to get off his duff and appoint a special counsel to investigate.
Immediately.
Hillary Clinton, Comey, Loretta Lynch.
Everybody.
Everybody.
All right. I will have you all back tomorrow. You guys have been phenomenal. Thank you for sharing your stories and your time. And it's amazing how the media got it wrong. And they got it wrong for a long period of time. And they still are reluctant even now. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Well,